I was 7 years old when I learned that being safe in your own bed doesn't mean you're safe at all. My parents had just separated, and my mom moved us into a small 2-bedroom apartment on the first floor of an old building. It wasn't much, but it was ours. I had my own room, but like most kids that age, I rarely stayed in it. Most nights I'd crawl into bed with my mom. Her room was at the end of a short hallway, and mine was directly across from it. If you stood in her doorway, you could see straight into my room through the open door. It was the middle of summer, the kind of sticky, humid night where even the air felt heavy. My mom had cracked her bedroom window open just above the headboard, hoping for even a sliver of a breeze. I remember the curtains moving slightly, the faint sound of the city settling outside. The apartment had an old, creaky feel to it, but I always felt safe there. As long as my mom was right next to me, I wasn't afraid of anything. That night, I woke up for no reason at all. Just opened my eyes in the dark. I remember sitting up slowly, rubbing my eyes, trying to figure out what had pulled me out of a deep sleep. My mom was still asleep beside me, her breathing soft and steady. I looked around the room, and that's when I noticed our cat, Mittens, sitting in the doorway of my mom's bedroom. That alone was strange. Mittens was a clingy cat. He always slept curled up at our feet. He never wandered off at night, but there he was, sitting perfectly still, staring into the hallway, not looking at me, looking past me, into the dark. I watched him for a few seconds, confused. Then, without any warning, he stood up and padded quietly across the hallway into my bedroom. I saw his silhouette disappear into the dark of my room, and a moment later, I heard a low, questioning meow. It wasn't a normal meow. It sounded like he was calling out to something, or someone. I turned to wake my mom. I shook her shoulder gently and whispered her name. It only took a few seconds for her to stir, mumble something, and ask what was wrong. I pointed toward the hallway and told her the cat was acting weird. She turned her head, still half asleep, and looked toward the door. For the next week, we were on edge. I stopped sleeping in my own room entirely. I wouldn't even go near the doorway. My mom kept the chain on the door day and night. She checked the locks 3 times before bed. We tried to move on, but something had shifted. The apartment didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a place we were just passing through, like we were guests in someone else's space. Every creak of the floorboards made me freeze. Every shadow in the hallway made my heart race. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the doorframe, waiting for that shape to appear again. My mom tried to reassure me, told me the police said it was probably just a random thief, that he wouldn't come back. But I could see it in her eyes too. She didn't believe it either. About a week later, my mom was deep cleaning the kitchen. She said she needed to feel in control of something, that scrubbing every surface made her feel like she was reclaiming the space. She opened the water heater closet, a small narrow door tucked into the corner of the kitchen that we rarely touched. We kept old cleaning supplies in there, maybe a few boxes we never unpacked. Nothing important. But when she pulled the door open, she found things that didn't belong to us. A tattered spiral notebook, a pair of cheap work gloves, wrappers from gum she had never bought, and in the notebook, written in messy, cramped handwriting, were names. Not our names, names of other people, dates, and rough, unsettling drawings. Rooms, doorways, beds. She called the police again, her voice shaking as she described what she found. They came back, took the notebook as evidence, and did another sweep of the apartment. This time they were quieter, more serious. One of the officers pulled my mom aside and told her something that made her go pale. He told her that the notebook appeared to contain logs, names of people, addresses, dates. The drawings matched the layout of our apartment. He said it was possible the man had been inside before that night, that he might have hidden in the water heater closet, waiting for us to fall asleep, that he might have been watching us for days, maybe longer. And the notebook was evidence he had done this before, to others. They never caught him. The notebook led nowhere. The names he wrote under were fake. The gloves had no traceable DNA, and the front door, the one my mom swore she locked with the deadbolt and chain, remained the biggest mystery. How did he get in? And more importantly, how long had he been in there with us? We moved out a month later. My mom never talked about it again. She threw away the notebook, the gloves, the wrappers. She tried to erase it all. But I know she checks every closet in every house she enters. And I do too. I'm 27 now. I still think about that night. I think about the cat sitting in the doorway, how he knew something was wrong before I did. Animals always know, don't they? I think about my mom throwing me through that window and how she saved my life without a second thought. She didn't hesitate. She didn't question what she saw. She just moved. But mostly, I think about that water heater closet, about how close he must have been to us, breathing the same air, standing just a few feet away while we slept. I wonder how many nights he was in there, how many times he watched us through the crack in the door, how many times he could have done something worse, but chose to wait, to watch, to come back another night. I don't know if he ever found another family. I don't know if he's still out there, but I do know that sometimes the scariest thing isn't a stranger breaking in. It's a stranger who was already there, waiting, in the dark, right next to you, and you never even knew. I had just gotten home from work. It was one of those long, draining shifts where you don't even remember the drive back. All I wanted was to sit in my room, scroll through my phone, and decompress. My room is on the second floor right at the end of the hallway. It's a quiet spot, mostly. That night, the house was unusually still. My little brother was downstairs watching TV. I could hear the faint murmur of whatever show he had on. The dog, a golden retriever we'd had for years, was sprawled out in the hallway just outside my door. I could hear her heavy breathing through the crack. She was fast asleep. I was lying on my bed, still in my work clothes, when I heard her stir. At first, it was just a soft shift of weight. Then she started making noise, whining, scratching at the floor, her nails clicking frantically against the hardwood. I sat up confused. She was usually a calm dog. She didn't bark at nothing. But this was different. She was jumping around, thumping her tail against the walls, letting out these sharp, excited barks. It sounded like she was greeting someone. I swung my legs off the bed and started toward the door, but before I could stand up, I heard it, clear as day. A man's voice. Low, friendly, almost casual. It said, "Ah, that's a good girl." I froze for a second. My first thought was that my dad's friend, our roommate, must have come home early. He had a deep voice, and that sounded like something he'd say. I called out, "Oh, you're home early," and reached for the doorknob. I didn't think twice. I opened the door expecting to see him standing there, crouched down, petting the dog. But the hallway was empty. I blinked. The dog was standing in the middle of the hallway, wagging her tail like crazy, her head tilted toward the far end where the hallway turns. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at nothing. Just the empty stretch of wall and the closed door to the spare bedroom. I stepped out, looking left and right. No one. The bathroom door was open. The light was off. The spare room door was shut. The stairs were at the other end, and I could still hear the TV playing downstairs. My little brother was definitely still there. So where did the voice come from? I called out again. "Hello, anyone there?" Nothing. Just the hum of the house settling and the dog's tail thumping against my leg. I felt a cold twist in my stomach. I knew what I heard. It wasn't a creak. It wasn't the TV bleeding through the floor. It was a voice, a man's voice right in front of my door, praising the dog like he'd known her for years. And I had answered it. I had called out to it like it was someone I trusted. The dog started whining again, pacing back and forth, still staring at the empty end of the hallway. Her ears were up, her body tense like she was waiting for someone to reappear. I walked slowly toward the end of the hall, my heart thudding in my chest. I checked the spare room, locked from the inside, which meant it had to have been locked from the hallway. No way anyone got in there. I checked the bathroom, empty. I stood at the top of the stairs and looked down. My little brother was on the couch facing the TV, completely oblivious. Then my brother yelled up the stairs. His voice was annoyed. He said, "Hey, why'd you get the dog all riled up? She was fine until you started messing with her." I told him I didn't do anything. Then I asked him, "Did you say something to her just now?" He said, "No." He said he heard a voice too, but he thought it was me or our roommate. He thought I was just playing with the dog. I told him I wasn't down there. I told him I'd just opened my door, that I heard the voice and thought it was the roommate. We both went quiet. The dog was still staring down the hallway, tail wagging and waiting. We checked the whole house, every closet, every room, every corner. Nothing. No open windows, no unlocked doors. The front door was still bolted from the inside. The back door was locked too. There was no way anyone could have been there and left without us hearing it. And the voice. I replayed it in my head 100 times. It wasn't muffled. It wasn't distant. It was close. Like someone was standing right next to the dog, bending down to pet her, like they were inches from my door. I asked my brother if the dog had been acting strange before that. He said no. She was asleep on the floor, quiet as always. Then she just jumped up and started going crazy. He said it was like she heard someone call her name. He thought it was me, so he didn't think to check. Why would he? We live in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing ever happens here. We called our roommate to ask if he'd come home early. He was still at work. He said he wouldn't be back for hours. My dad was out of town. There was no one else who could have been in the house. No one with a key. No one with a voice like that. I didn't sleep well for a few days after that. Every time I walked down that hallway, I found myself glancing toward the empty end. The dog would sometimes stop and stare at the same spot. Her ears perked up, her tail wagging slowly, like she was waiting for someone to come back. Someone she knew. Someone I couldn't see. I still don't know who or what said those words. I don't know if I imagined it, or if my brother and I both imagined the same thing at the same time. But I know what I heard. I know how close it was. And I know that the dog, the one who never lies, heard it too. Sometimes when I'm home alone, I pause at the top of the stairs just to listen, just to make sure the hallway stays empty. So far it always has. But I can't shake the feeling that something was there that night. Something that knew exactly what to say to a dog that never barked at strangers. And I can't help but wonder what it was really praising her for. I moved into the house in early fall. It was a rental, cheap for the area, which should have been my first red flag. The landlord seemed eager to get it off his hands, and he barely asked me any questions before handing over the keys. I didn't think much of it at the time. It was a small 2-bedroom, a little rundown, but I was just happy to have a place of my own. The first week was fine. Quiet. Too quiet, honestly. I'm used to city noise, so the silence of that neighborhood took some getting used to. At night, I'd lie in bed and hear nothing but the creak of the house settling and the occasional rustle of leaves outside. I started to like it. It felt peaceful. That changed around the second week. I started hearing scratching at night. Not outside, inside, in the walls. It was faint, barely noticeable, like a mouse or a rat moving through the insulation. I told myself it was nothing. Old houses have pests. I put out traps, but nothing ever triggered them. The scratching kept happening though, always around 2 or 3 in the morning, always coming from the direction of the hall closet. One night I got up to check. I opened the closet door and stood there in the dark, listening. The scratching stopped. I waited, holding my breath. Then I heard it. A soft, deliberate knock. 3 taps, like someone was letting me know they were there. I slammed the door shut and went back to bed. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I searched that closet from top to bottom. It was just a standard hall closet. Old coats, a vacuum, some boxes. I ran my hand along the back wall, and that's when I noticed something strange. The paneling at the back didn't feel right. It was loose. I pressed on it, and it shifted. I pulled it away, and there was a crawl space. A narrow, dark opening that led into the space between the walls. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and peered inside. It was dusty, cobweb-filled, and cramped. At first, I didn't see anything, but then I angled the light to the side and my stomach dropped. There was a sleeping bag, a backpack, and food wrappers, a lot of them. Someone had been living inside my walls. I backed away slowly, my hands shaking. I called the police and they came and searched the entire house. They found more, a water bottle, a flashlight, a small knife. And on the wall of the crawl space, scratched into the wood, were names, dates, tally marks. They counted over 20 of them. The officer told me they couldn't find anyone. But he also said something that made my blood run cold. He said, "Whoever was here, they probably left recently." The sleeping bag was still warm. They took the evidence and told me to stay somewhere else for a few days. I did. I stayed with a friend and didn't go back to that house for a full week. When I finally returned, I had a locksmith change every lock. I boarded up the crawl space entrance. I tried to forget it ever happened, but a few nights later, I heard it again. A soft knock, 3 taps, coming from inside the wall. The police said they never found the person. They never identified the names in the scratches either. All they could tell me was that the crawl space had been used for years, long before I moved in. Whoever it was, they were careful, and they were still out there. I moved out a month later. I never told the landlord why. I don't know who that person was or how long they had been in that house, but every time I think about that crawl space, I remember the warmth of that sleeping bag. And I wonder, if I had opened that closet one night earlier, would I have caught them? Or would they have caught me?